Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at rounds 8 and 9 of the Marshall Chess Club Labor Day Invitational being held in New York City. Now, the famous YouTuber and aspiring Grandmaster candidate Levy Rozman is in action, coming off an epic win in the 7th round against Liam Putnam. So with 2 rounds left, Levy wants to finish strong, and he is playing with the black pieces against Igor Kovalchuk, rated 2057, the lowest rated player in the event in the 8th round. So, Levy with the black pieces, desperate to win and not throw away some of his hard-earned valuable points that he won in the previous round. So we get e4. Levy plays c6 with the classic Carl Khan. We get knight c3, d5, d4, and now Levy trades on e4 and plays the move knight to f6. Now, I suspect that if Levy were playing someone a little bit higher rated, he probably would have played the system with bishop to f5, and after knight g3, bishop g6, normally the lines continue with knight f3, knight d7, h4, h6, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, takes, and e6. Black is completely fine in these positions, but normally it's considered to be a very solid line with limited winning chances, and in this case, Levy is playing someone much lower rated, so he does not want to give up a draw, and he wants to create something very, very complicated. So, Levy plays knight f6. We get the trade of the knights, and now we have the move c3 being played, bishop d6, and now we get bishop d3. Now, the reason white plays c3 is that if white plays bishop d3 right away, this would hang the pawn on d4. So we get c3, bishop d6, bishop d3, Levy plays knight to a6, and now we get the move queen c2. Now, white could take the knight on a6 to ruin black's pawn structure, but in the long run, the two bishops are actually worth more than the compromised pawns here. If white plays knight e2, let's just say castles, for example, rook e8, white plays something like bishop to e3. Now you can play something like a5 here, potentially, with rook b8 ideas down the road. There's also bishop a6, and black is already completely fine. So, after knight to a6, we get the move queen to c2, Levy plays knight c7, and now we have the move knight to e2, and here Levy plays the move h5. Now, Levy would love to castle his king, but after bishop takes h7, you simply drop a juicer, and you will lose the game as well. So Levy goes h5. We get knight to g3, Levy plays h4, and now we have the move knight to f5, attacking both the bishop and the pawn at the same time. Levy trades the bishops for the knight. We get g6, bishop g4, and now Levy plays move f5. Here, Kovalchuk goes bishop f3, and now we're sort of out of the opening phase, or out of where players are in their theory, but I don't really like this position for Levy, because much like a lot of his other games, we've ended up in a fairly simplified situation. Pawn structure is very hard set here. White doesn't really have a whole lot going on, but neither does black. If black tries c5, you would hang the pawn on b7, so only one pawn break here, and white having very easy development, like moving the bishop to e3 and castles to the queen side, or castling to the king side. It already feels like it's a position that I'm not a huge fan of, and I think for Levy, probably already was feeling quite uncomfortable. So, Levy plays move queen f6. Kovalchuk plays bishop e3, intending to castle the queen side, and now Levy plays move knight d5. Here we get castles, Levy castles, and now we have the move king b1 being played. Now, nothing that Levy's opponent has done so far is particularly inspiring or out of the ordinary, which is why it's so difficult to stick to one opening and be successful with it, because already here Levy is playing someone 300 points lower rated, but his opponent hasn't really done anything wrong, and he simply has no real weaknesses, and it's going to be a big task for Levy to try and prove that he can win this game, even though he is the superior player. So Levy here goes rook e8. Now, Levy probably should have traded. I suspect the reason he did not trade is that he probably thought this position after rook e1, or rook e8, I should say, rook to e1, followed by e4, say king g7, e4 takes, and something like queen e7, h3, rook e8, bishop f3 is simply too solid here. White has these pawns anchoring the bishop. We have the opposite color bishops as well, and Levy probably thought that if he traded the knight for the bishop, the game would trend towards a draw. So, Levy goes rook e8, but now we get bishop c1, retreating the bishop and avoiding hanging a pawn in the center of the board, and Levy goes b5, trying to stop white from playing c4. Here, Kovalchuk plays g3, a logical move. If white were to play h3, you can always create some weaknesses on f4 down the road, just to illustrate the point. If you get something like this, for example, suddenly the pawns on g2 and h3 become a little bit soft here. Black's not better or anything, but it could become a little bit unpleasant. So Kovalchuk plays g3 to break any ideas. There's no bishop f4 now, and you also stop black from ever spying the pawn on h2. Here Levy goes h3, and now after the move rook h1, we get a very abrupt draw. The players agreed to the draw here, and I suspect that what happened is that Levy's opponent, Igor Kovalchuk, probably offered the draw up nearly an hour on the clock with a slightly better position here, and Levy felt like he had to take the draw or else he would end up in serious trouble. Now, for Levy, I think it's actually a very important moment to make the draw, because I think that if you're playing someone stronger, there's a very good chance he would lose this game because White has all the play here. What do I mean by that? First of all, in the end game, you have this weak pawn on h3. If White is able to, let's just set up a position like this, Bishop can always target this pawn on h3. It can become a weakness. Additionally, if you play a move like King G7, White can play Queen B3 or even take on D5 and go Queen B3, and suddenly you have this problem with the right triangle where both your pawns are hanging, and Black is actually in real danger of losing this game. So Levy not really having a clear-cut plan, being down an hour on the clock, in this situation, I think taking the draw is actually correct, because now he can get a bit of a breather, the game did not go super long, and prepare for his final round game where he's playing against a 2400 level player. Alright, so game ends in a draw. Now Levy definitely not happy with this draw. It cost him about 3 points, so he made 5, I think he won 5.7 for the win against Liam Putnam, and he loses 3.6, so he's only getting 2 points effectively off the last 2 games, but like I said, he is in bad shape in the situation. I think it's completely justifiable to make the draw. Alright, so now we move to round number 9, Levy playing with the white piece against Robert Shliatenko. I realize actually I should put the picture of Levy. I don't think I put the picture, so I'll put it up very quickly. There we go, and adjust the rating. That's good. I think you guys should still see it, and it looks completely fine. So Levy in round number 9 now is playing with white pieces against Robert Shliatenko, rated 24-11. Now Levy's on 2 points out of 8, but this is a big last round game. If he can win this game, he will be feeling very good about himself as he tries to prepare for his upcoming match against Pia Cramlin. For Robert Shliatenko, this is a name that you may or may not be familiar with. He's actually somebody that I did play when I did my IRL chess, or my IRL Blitz games of chess in Los Angeles at Coffee Chess. I did play him a couple of games with 5-1 timeouts. I think I won one game and drew one, but he is someone that you may or may not be familiar of because I did play him in the past. At any rate, Robert's having a good turn. He's on 5 out of 8. Levy's on 2 out of 8, so this could be a tough pairing. All right, Levy opens with c4, playing the classic English opening, and Robert takes up the challenge by playing e5. Now, most of the games of this tournament, Levy's opponents have been playing e6, and the reason I think for this is that after e6, White really ends up having to go back into normal systems like Catalans or e3s or knight c3s, and you don't generally get the imbalances that you do in the actual English opening after c4 and e5. Nonetheless, Levy's opponent is ready for the task, and he chooses to play it. So Levy goes g3 here. Sorry, I got something in my eye. Give me 1 second as I do this. So Levy goes g3. Here we got the move c6, and now Levy plays d4. We have e4, bishop g2, and the move d5 is played. Now you will notice that Black has a classic connect 4 in the center of the board. If we were playing connect 4, it's GG, why not, game over. But luckily we're playing the great game of chess, which has been around for a few millennia longer than connect 4. So after d5, Levy plays the move a3 here, and the reason behind this move is that White really wants to go knight c3 to target these pawns in the center of the board, but if you play it right away, Black can play bishop b4, pinning the knight, and now you don't have the same threats towards these 2 pawns on d5 and e4. So Levy goes a3 here to stop Black from playing bishop b4, and then he will go knight e3 to target the pawns on d5 and e4. We get the move h6 here. Levy plays knight c3. We have knight f6, and now we get the move f3. Now, the reason that Black played h6, by the way, is the exact same reason Levy played a3, which is that h6 stops White from going bishop g5, pinning the knight, and trying to put pressure on these pawns once again. So Levy goes f3 here. Nice move. We get takes, and now we have the move bishop d6, and this is surprisingly enough a fairly serious inaccuracy. Now, one thing you'll notice is that Levy's opponent, Robert Shliatenko, was still moving pretty quickly here. I think that probably he thought this was the correct square, and he simply didn't use the right time, but Black actually should have gone bishop e7, because after castles, knight h4, and bishop e6, now you're protecting the pawn on d5 with the pawn, the bishop, the knight, and the queen, and as we're about to see in the game, this makes a very big difference. So we get bishop d6, castles, knight to h4, and now we have the move bishop e6 being played. Now Black could have tried to take this pawn on c4, but after White goes e4, suddenly White has this big white center. You have ideas like e5, knight f5, and White is actually much, much better here already. I'm not going to go into long lines, but with this big white center, the idea to harass the knight, let's just say you go bishop g4, queen e1, bishop c7, bishop e3. Let's just say black plays knight d7. Now you can go h3, bishop to e6, for example, and after d5, suddenly black's bishop is getting trapped in the middle of the board here with the knight and the bishop guarding the pawn. And if black were to go bishop h5, for example, now you can go e5, knight h7, and after knight to f5, suddenly you've got this great knife on f5, you have g4, knight e4, and all of white's pieces are heading towards the black king side. So, after knight h4, we get to move bishop e6 instead, and the reason that this is so important is that in this position, if the bishop is on e7, actually let me put the bishop here, let me just make a quiet move like this, you will notice that here, black can very quietly play queen to d7 because the queen guards the pawn on b7 and the pawn on d5 is protected here by all black's pieces. But in the game, after bishop to e6 here, if Levy plays move queen b3, black is actually in a world of hurt. If you play queen d7, it's no good because I can simply take, sack the rook, and after takes, bishop takes h6, white is simply crushing here, rook e8, knight d5, for example, weak pawns on f6 and f7, open king on g8, black is in a lot of trouble. So, when I was watching this game from the airport before my flight to Paris, which, by the way, I am in Paris, France for Speed Chess Championship, I was feeling very, very good about Levy's chances here because there are very limited options to go for, and I thought queen b3 was the most natural human move to consider. Instead, Levy plays knight f5. Now, this move is not bad by any stretch. It's the other logical move, but he misses an opportunity with queen b3. So, Robert Sliatenko plays bishop c7, and now Levy decides to take this pawn on d5. And this was a big bummer for me when I saw this being played, because again, queen to b3 here would have led to a very big advantage for white. If black were to go bishop b6, there's c5 attacking the bishop. You move the bishop, lose the pawn, and now you have to move the knight to not lose the rook. And after queen c6, white has 2 extra pawns and should win the game. So black here probably has to play something like bishop takes f5, rook takes f5, and the computer says bishop a5, which frankly I think is not human whatsoever. I think after queen b3, probably what would have happened in the game is something like b6 here, for example. But white can now take and sack the knight here. And after takes, white is doing extremely well in this position. Because if black goes rook e8, you have bishop g5 to pin the knight. And after knight b7, you can sack the rook. And after knight takes rook to f1, white will win this knight. And after, let's just say, bishop d6, takes, bishop e7, takes, bishop d5, rook c8, and e4. If we do the count, and of course I am in France, of course, white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, black has 1, 2, 3. Black basically is down 3 pawns, so white has a horse and 3 pawns in return for a rook. With the open king on g8, this is absolutely hopeless. White should win the game. So, I was feeling very good about this. I was waiting for my flight. I was expecting Levy to play queen b3, and then to my horror, he decided to take this pawn on d5. Now, you will notice the evaluation bar has not changed a whole lot in this position because white is still much better. But the problem now is there's a very thin line, or there's this needle. You have to thread the needle to be much better here, and the only way to be better here is to go for a big sack with bishop takes pawn takes bishop, and now after queen d2, let's just say black takes on f5, for example, and goes king g7. You stack the towers to pressure the horse. Black goes knight d7. You play knight d5. And after knight g8 and a move like knight e3, apparently white is much better, if not winning. But keep in mind that Levy has been very shaky in this tournament. He's lacking in confidence. He's lost a lot of games. Expecting Levy to go for a sharp line like this when he's not sure, and considering the tournament situation, in my opinion, that's asking a lot. I really think that's asking almost too much to expect him to go for the sack if he doesn't see a conclusive way to be winning. So, Levy does not do that. Instead, he plays move queen b3. And now, unfortunately, black can play bishop b6. And everything has gone wrong here from the general standpoint. Now there's no pawn to c5. Your pawn on d4 is a little bit weak. And in fact, in this position, if you're not going for a sack anymore, black can end up better quite easily. So Levy goes knight to a4. Here we got the move knight to c6 being played. This is not the best move here. There's a very nice computer line with bishop takes knight, knight takes bishop, and this in-between move, bishop c2 to attack the queen. And after takes, let's just say white plays a move like queen d3, for example. Black can probably just play knight bd7. Let's just say white goes rook b1 to guard the pawn. After rook e8, let's just say bishop d2. Black can play rook c8 or knight e4 here. And with these knights coming to the center of the board, combined with these weak pawns on b2 and d4, with the rook being on an open file and the other rook going to the open c file, white can be in a lot of trouble. So, Sliatenko plays knight c6 instead, completely logical. We got knight takes bishop, pawn takes knight, and here Levy plays move queen d3. Now, one important thing in chess is that generally, if you end up in a situation where you can sack pieces multiple times in a row, the more times that you don't go for the sacrifice, the harder it becomes. And this is one such situation where Levy has already rejected the sacrifice, I think two if not three times already. And the more times you reject it, the harder it becomes to play it. And also at this point, Black has now completed his development, which makes it even harder to go for the sacrifice. So what Levy should have done is he still should have gone for the sack, because after takes here, let's say Black were to play knight d4, White can play the move queen to d3, the knight's under attack, rook's under attack. If you move the knight back, there's bishop g5 here, pinning the knight, knight to e5, you go queen d4, and here Black will lose something. One of these knights will drop. If you go knight d7 here, I think White can even just sack the rook, and after takes, let's just say Black goes queen c7, you now have queen h4 with the classic lobster pincer checkmate with the bishop and the queen. So, Levy has the opportunity to sack, but also it's worth pointing out that after takes, Black can play knight h7, takes, queen d3 here, and after queen g5, White is still better in this position, but it's nothing conclusive, and with it not being conclusive, it is once again very hard to simply play this without knowing that it's actually very good. So, Levy goes queen d3 instead, and now we get to move rook d8, and unfortunately at this point, my flight was finally taking off after being delayed for quite a while, but it's very clear to me that Black's moves now become much easier. Black has the idea of knight to e4 or queen d7, and if White can't sack on h6, it's really not clear what White's plan will be for the remainder of the game. On top of that, Levy is already down the clock as well, so it's a very, very difficult situation. So Levy plays bishop d2. Now we get knight to e4, very logical move, jumping with the horse to the center of the board, and Levy plays bishop e3. Now here Levy probably has a couple of options. Just to point out one of them, if White were to take on e4, this is actually very bad, because after takes queen e4, Black can trade on f5 and take this pawn on d4, checking the king, but when you block, you now lose the bishop, and with it, you're down a horse, and you will resign the game very soon. The other move that the computer likes is this move bishop c3. Now, I'm going to be honest, in a game, there are certain types of moves that feel intuitive and moves that don't. And for pretty much this entire game, Levy has been spying these pawns on the king side with the bishop and the knight, and moving the bishop to a diagonal where it's simply blocked by a pawn, there's no scope, is very hard to do. It's not intuitive whatsoever, but it's actually a very good move because Black here is supposed to trade the knight for the bishop, and after takes, rook c8 and queen to f3, Black is only very slightly better. Now, Levy probably didn't even consider it because my guess is he probably thought, well, what's the big deal? Black can go queen to d7. But shockingly, this move actually is a huge mistake, and White is now winning the game because White can sack the knight, and after takes, and d5, checking the king. King goes back. You now take the bishop, and both queens are actually hanging at the same time. If you take with the queen on e6, after queen e3, you're threatening rook to f6 here with the bishop and the rook. So Black should play f5, but now you can simply take the pawn on b6. Let's just say Black goes rook e7, and after rook a d1 with this nice diagonal for the bishop and maybe the queen down the road, combined with the weak pawns on b7 and f5 here, Black is simply losing the game. So bishop c3 would have been probably the best move here. I don't fault Levy for not seeing it. Frankly, I think the idea of bishop c3 and knight g7 is really deep. And as I said, from the human perspective, White has been spying this king side the whole game, and putting the bishop on a closed diagonal simply seems quite illogical. Levy goes bishop e3, and now after queen d7, Levy is in a lot of trouble here because the knight on f5 is no longer anchored here. It's a very weak piece, in fact, and White is struggling to create any counterplay. So Levy goes g4 in this position, and now, unfortunately, Robert Sliatenko finds the best move in the position, which is knight to e7, removing this knight on f5. Now, White could move the knight away, but then you lose a pawn. If White plays bishop h3, trying to overprotect, Black has h5, very similar to the game, and everything on this diagonal is a serious problem for White to deal with here. So, Levy trades the knights, goes h3, but now we get the thematic move h5, and suddenly Levy's whole king side is collapsing here. And at this point in the game, down nearly 15 minutes on the clock, I had the sinking feeling that he was probably going to lose. So Levy decides to play the move rook to f4. Now the computer here wants White to play this very unusual idea, bishop f4, takes an h4, bishop f5, and I think you're supposed to play like queen b3 here. And maybe there's a faint glimmer of hope because you're not simply getting mated on the king side. The king is actually kind of safe here. The pawn shields any big attacks on the g file. But that being said, it's very, very computerish. I don't think it's very human. Also, you have to keep in mind that Levy, no doubt, knew he was better at some point in this game earlier, and it's been drifting in the wrong direction. It's been getting worse and worse, and you combine it with how poorly he's played throughout the event. Psychologically, at some point, it's very hard to put up stiff resistance, and also this is the last round of the event, and I'm sure Levy just wants it to all be over. So, Levy goes rook f4 instead. We get takes. He decides to take. We get bishop g4. He takes on e4. And now he goes queen b3. Now, what Levy is hoping for is a dream world situation. I'm just going to make some random moves here where he can get this rook to g1, try to use these open files, and after bishop e6, d5 takes, and queen c3, suddenly white has a lot of pressure on the open g and the open f files, and maybe you can mount an attack, and there is a glimmer of hope that Levy can find a way to win. Now keep in mind, I've made 3 or 4 moves in a row for black, which are completely useless, so it is still very far off from obtaining this position. So after queen b3, here Robert Shliatenko plays the move rook to a5, going for the classic rook lift, bruh. He wants to bring the rook to h5 or g5 in this position and mate the white king on g1. Levy plays the move rook f2, and now we get this nasty move bishop to h3. Now what Levy would also like to do here, if it's possible, is he'd love to run his king over to, let me just put the rook here, run the king to d2, and again go for rook g1 and try to create some counterplay, but bishop h3 just snuffs that idea out immediately. King cannot run here to f1, and now there are threats like queen g4, and here it's very, very bad. So Levy plays rook h2, we get rook to h5, and now we have king h1 being played, trying to play the move rook g1, but now Robert Shliatenko plays a brilliant move bishop g2, sacking the bishop, and here Levy decides to simply resign the game on the spot rather than play out a few more moves. Now, the reason Levy resigned is that if he were to take the bishop after queen g4, king h1, the rook trade, and rook e6 here, black has a very rudimentary idea of playing rook to g6 here, threatening the mate on g2, and if white plays rook g1, there's queen to h4 or queen to h5. Both these ideas checkmate the white king on h2. And if white plays the move rook to g1 here, black can go check, king g2, check, king f1, and a very important move, which is rook to f6, stopping the white king from running to the queen side. And after king g2, queen g4, king h2, black now can play queen to h5. If you go king g2, there's takes, king h1, and there are many ways for black to win here, but probably simplest is check, followed by rook to f3 with queen h3 or queen g4, and the white king is just getting mated. There's nothing you can really do about it. And if you were to play this move, king g3, it's the same problem. Black simply takes. There's rook g6, rook f3, queen f3. All roads lead to Rome here. There's simply no way to survive. And Levy just decides to throw in the towel here after bishop g2 and resign the game. So what does that mean? That means that Levy ends the turn with 2 points out of 9, a very, very rough way to end with a draw against the lowest rated player in the field, and now lost the final game. And this was a game, by the way, this final, which he should have won. I think if Levy had confidence, he would have played queen b3 either one of those 2 times when it was very good, but simply wasn't meant to be. Very, very tough result. Levy dropped something like 25 points after this loss, basically erases all the gains he made in the earlier New York tournament, and maybe one or two of the wins that he had in Spain as well. So it's very, very rough, very difficult, obviously. But hopefully Levy will be able to bounce back and move forward. Now, before we call it a day, I will talk about 3 important things that I noticed in this event. The first thing I'm going to talk about is one area that I think Levy needs to improve, is that one thing that I've said is that Levy feels to me like he's very much a momentum player. And what I mean by that is someone where when he starts off very well, his confidence grows, he starts playing better and better. When he gets off to a bad start, it seems to get worse and worse. He has less confidence, uses too much time, starts doubting himself, second guessing everything, and things can go wrong very, very quickly. As we saw in this tournament after he lost that very tough second round game to James Chirilla. So, Levy needs to work more, I think, on trying to be a little bit more consistent where he isn't as much of a momentum player. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, but that's the first big takeaway that I have from this event. Now, the second thing that I would talk about is Levy's openings. Now, for this event, I'm not going to be critical because he clearly came in ready with these openings. They had worked so far in the tournaments he played, the previous Marshall tournament, the tournament in Spain, but it's clear to me now that a lot of players have adapted to his openings. They know that he's playing the Caro-Kann every game. They know that he's playing a lot of these Englishes or knight f3, e3, b3 type systems, and he's going to need a little bit more variety going forward when he plays in tournaments because people will simply be able to prepare for these openings, and he will struggle because it's very hard when your opponent is able to play 15, 20 moves, and you're the one who has to think a lot up to that point. So I think Levy's openings, he's going to have to work quite a bit on them. But third and most important point in my mind is the psychological aspect. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, what I mean by that is that Levy is someone who, for most of his career, he's played chess. He hasn't really had the spotlight shown on him, I think is the right word, for most of his career. But he does have that now. Everybody's playing against, they're familiar with his YouTube channel. They know who he is a chess celebrity. So when he competes in these tournaments, there are going to be a lot of haters. There's going to be a lot of attention around his games. And it seemed to me that in this event, Levy was definitely a little bit preoccupied with it when it started going downhill. I think he was letting letting the negativity, letting the trolls, the haters get in his mind. I think he's going to have to find a way to shut that off, tune it out. Now, it's easier said than done because certainly when you are a content creator, you pay a lot of attention to comments, social media interaction, this sort of stuff. But I think when Levy plays, if he can, he's going to need to tune it out completely because it's not something he's ever had to deal with. And I felt like it definitely affected him in the later stages of this tournament. And honestly, it's not going to get better going forward, I would say, because unlike content creation, where when you make videos, you can make a video, see some comments, laugh, and move on. In a chess tournament, the show goes on. You keep playing game after game, and you don't have the same control in the way you do with when you're making regular content creation videos. So I think dealing with the haters and the trolls is going to be a very, very important aspect or part of Levy trying to improve and gain rating points and maybe getting to Grandmaster down the road. So those are the three big takeaways. I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from rounds 8 and 9 of the Marshall Chess Club Labor Day Invitational being held in New York City. I will be doing recaps here from Paris. I am playing the Speed Chess Championship, the semifinals, and hopefully the finals as well. We'll see how it all goes down, but I will be doing some recaps of that. But I hope you guys have enjoyed the recap. If you are not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more great recaps in the coming days. So see you guys very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.